Still have questions or concerns about who Erika Kirk is and why she seems to have lied many times on record? Well, you're Satan, and I'm sorry that you are. And also, I would like to remind you that you are destroying Charlie's legacy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paige Monroe, and this is The Paige Monroe Show. Before we get started, I want to make something clear. I don't like Candace Owens, and I don't like Erika Kirk. And honestly, I find it a little amusing when two ultra-conservative MAGA personalities start tearing each other down in public. First, Candace Owens has spent years acting as a full-on MAGA mouthpiece. She helped usher in a lot of the chaos and extremism we're seeing in politics today. She has been one of the loudest voices pushing the culture war politics that has divided this country. And second, because it's pretty blatantly obvious what Erika Kirk is doing, at least to me. Two MAGA personalities going after each other in public. And now Candace Owens has released a series called Bride of Charlie. So today, I'm reacting to episode 1.
Okay, you guys, there is a very strange thing happening right now where a young woman with absolutely zero professional qualifications has been inserted at the top of a charity organization that pulled in over $250 million last year. And the media is telling you that you have no right to know or to ask anything about her.
Right away, Candace opens this like a major scandal. She tells the audience that something unusual has happened, that people are being discouraged from asking questions, and that a powerful organization is involved. That's a strong opening. But when you start a story that aggressively, the rest of the episode has to deliver real proof, not just strong storytelling. Candace then moves into the idea that sympathy is being used as a shield. The argument is that because Erika Kirk is a grieving widow, the public is being told not to ask questions.
The argument being made is that her husband was murdered, therefore she has a right to assume the position. And despite the fact that Turning Point USA is a literal charity, and therefore it's not even have to pay tax on that $250 million plus or pay tax on the alleged future billions, these talking heads are claiming that the public simply wanting to ensure the person who is running that organization is, I don't know, at a bare minimum, moderately honest about who she says she is. No, that inquiry makes you a monster.
Now, I do think it's possible to feel compassion for someone and still ask legitimate questions about leadership, public money, and public influence. Those things are not mutually exclusive, but the key issue is whether the questions being raised are grounded in evidence or driven mostly by suspicion. From there, Candace expands the story. It's no longer just about Erika Kirk. It also becomes about the backlash Candace herself received when the trailer for the series was released.
Now, it is very important that I remind you, we haven't even said anything yet. A 2-minute trailer resulted in one of the most aggressive preemptive PR strikes that I have ever seen. They posted photos of my manager's infant daughter, my makeup artist, my family members. Lots of voicemail from my producer. One blinked when entire investigative series and books were written about Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, Meghan Markle, because they're public figures. I've effectively endured 10 years in politics with nonstop exposés and investigations into my background, but we're told Erika is somehow untouchable.
That's an effective storytelling move, because once the investigator becomes part of the story, the audience begins to feel like they are watching something dangerous or suppressed, but it also raises the emotional stakes before the evidence is fully presented. Then Candace makes what is really the thesis statement of episode 1. She says that something is not right with Erika Kirk. At that point, the episode stops simply asking questions. It starts guiding the audience toward a conclusion. And when that happens, the burden of proof becomes much heavier. Because now the series has to demonstrate that claim.
The truth does not require a multi-million-dollar PR campaign. It also does not fear inspection. So welcome to Bride of Charlie.
We have nothing to hide.
Where should we begin in this story? I think maybe with just a blanket statement. Something is not right with Erika Kirk.
The biggest turns in the episode is when Candace reads the statement written by Elizabeth Lane. This is where the story shifts away from documents and timelines and towards psychological interpretation.
Elizabeth Lane wrote, "I'm going to be blunt. I have reached the point where I find Erika Kirk to be deeply disturbing, not because of rumors or gossip, but because of consistent, observable patterns of behavior.
Instead of focusing on specific actions, the discussion becomes about personality traits and perceived behavior. That's always risky territory. Because when you start telling an audience what kind of person someone is instead of what they actually did, you are asking them to accept something much more subjective.
It is a good place to start because there are a lot of things that Elizabeth said there that I think I am going to be able to prove, adapting her personality to suit the people that she meets, the lies that she tells. I've done a lot of work here speaking to ex-boyfriends, speaking to old classmates. I really wanted to get a sense of who Erika was.
The episode then leans heavily into archetypes: the ambitious climber, the strategist, the power seeker behind the brand. Candace even compares the dynamic to Bill and Hillary Clinton.
She realized that she could create a great brand out of him and herself, and they still are a brand, the Clintons. No one in this world can say that those two love each other. They are a brand that works. That's why she's sticking around despite Epstein and Lewinsky.
And whether that comparison feels fair or unfair, you can see what the episode is doing. It is transforming Erika from a person into a recognizable political character. That can be powerful storytelling, but a compelling archetype is not the same thing as evidence. A story can feel true long before it's proven.
What is striking is how completely her public identity reshapes itself after that relationship begins. The aesthetic, the tone, the values, the presentation all change. Overnight, the persona shifts into the role that best suits Charlie's world.
The next argument Candace makes is that Erika was always preparing for power, that she was deeply involved in the organization, and that stepping into leadership after Charlie's death came naturally. Now, if that's true, it matters, but that's also the kind of claim that requires documentation. Influence inside an organization has to be demonstrated with specifics, not just inferred from appearances.
Just days after her husband's death, she was already laying out ambitious plans for the company over Zoom. It's obvious she was always deeply involved in the business and knew exactly where to pick up when her turn came. What people struggle to watch, what makes the screen unbearable, is not grief. It's the absence of emotional continuity. Performances can be learned. Trust me, as a former actress, I can speak to that. But emotion cannot be improvised or mimicked if you've never experienced it.
Then the episode takes a very sharp turn. Candace starts talking about psychology, Freud, MK Ultra, social engineering, and historical psychological experiments. And this is where the story moves far beyond Erika Kirk herself. Whenever an investigation jumps into broader conspiratorial frameworks, viewers should slow down, because a larger narrative can make a story feel deeper and more sinister, even when it doesn't directly prove the case in front of you.
For drugging and experimenting upon citizens with the explicit goal of controlling minds, social engineering, making people get into a formation. These are indisputable and historical facts. Yeah, MK Ultra was a military-grade program. Truthfully, behind every unthinkable crime is a deranged psychologist and a prescription cabinet.
Candace then escalates further. She suggests that the issue might not just be lying, but that Erika might not even realize when she is lying.
What alarms me about Erika isn't so much the fact that she lies, which we will prove to you over and over again, but it's also the fact that I don't know that she's aware that she's lying. It's almost as though she doesn't remember. Like the version that she's telling us today or yesterday was just recently downloaded into her mind, and she therefore thinks it's true, like a faulty memory or something.
That is a major escalation. Now, we're not just talking about contradictions. We're talking about speculation about someone's mental state, and claims like that require an extremely high standard of proof. Where the episode becomes stronger is when it shifts back to factual claims about Erika's upbringing. Candace challenges the narrative that Erika was raised by a single mother. That is much more concrete territory. Public statements, family structure, and timelines are things that can actually be verified. If there are inconsistencies there, that's the type of issue a serious investigation should focus on, because that moves the conversation away from speculation and toward evidence.
We are told that Erika Frantzwey was raised by a strong, independent, entrepreneurial, single mother who taught her how to be a good Christian, a devout Catholic mother. Lori Frantzwey, right? The only problem is that it's just not true. Erika was not raised by a single mother, like at all. Erika's father, Kent Fronsvay, by the way, he's Kenneth Fronsvay, but he goes by Kent, was always in her life.
Candace then walks through divorce documents, conflicting dates, and handwritten edits in court filings.
One of the facts is that Kent and Lori were married on November 20th, 1995. Attached to this document, which was filed on July 20th, 1998, is another document. It's a separation agreement, and it completely edits the date of the marriage between Kent and Lori from November 20th, 1995 down to November 7th, 1982. A casual 13 years and 13 days wiped out.
This is probably the most evidence-based part of the entire episode. Now, even that doesn't automatically prove the larger theory she is building. But at least it gives viewers something concrete to examine. Documents can be checked, timelines can be compared, records can be verified. That's where an investigation becomes much stronger.
But it's going to get even more absurd when we examine the divorce decree. Once again, the marriage date is listed, the initial marriage date between Kent and Lori, as November 20th, 1995 in Marblehead, Massachusetts. But oddly, you can see that somebody just went in and tried to edit that date by hand. I guess the unnotarized 1982 that we saw in the initial filing was too difficult. It would have been too obvious. So this time they're attempting to do it by hand and edit the date of marriage back just 10 years, not 13 years. This is not subtle, it is not normal, and it bothers me greatly.
Later in the episode, Candace starts building a broader narrative around Erika's family background. She brings up gambling, lottery operations, casino ties, and family history.
Okay, so we obviously cannot go so far as to suggest that Lori, Loretta Abbess, Stanley Wallstad Fronsvay was openly committing fraud. We can't say that. What we can confirm to you, however, is that if she was doing that, breaking the law and committing fraud is something that Lori's family is kind of historically known for. They kind of arrived into this country doing just that. You see, Lori Fronsvay, like I said, was born Loretta Abbess. She was named after her Syrian grandmother, Loretta Abbess.
From a storytelling perspective, that creates a pattern. But viewers should still ask an important question. Are those family details directly relevant to Erika herself, or are they being used to create a darker atmosphere around the story?
I want to sear into your mind right now that the Abbess family history is steep in gambling and casino.
One of the more unusual parts of the episode is the discussion about Swedish language and the terms morfar and farfar. Candace treats that detail as a potentially important clue about family relationships.
She definitively was close to her grandfather. We know this because she posts about him many, many times over the years, referring to him affectionately as her morfar. Morfar quite literally translates into mother's father, morfar. And farfar quite literally translates into father's father. We have different words for these things. Your father's mother, your morfar. You would never call, and that's what she's doing. She's calling him her morfar. That is Erika's farfar. If Kent is her father, her father's father is her farfar.
Now, sometimes small details really do matter, but sometimes they are also asked to carry more weight than they deserve. And that's another place where viewers need to decide how convincing they find the argument. The episode eventually moves into even more speculative territory. Candace starts connecting family relationships, social ties, and religious connections into a much larger possible explanation. And that's where things get complicated. Because interesting connections are not the same thing as proof. They can raise questions, but they don't necessarily answer them.
Why does her one-time roommate, Nicole Rothstein, allege that half of their family, referring to her and Erika's family, is Jewish? She also claimed Erika was her best friend and her cousin. Nicole Rothstein said this. It goes a little further, though. Erika also posted a lovely tribute to Alan Rothstein, Nicole's father, online. She calls him uncle to Erika. That would be her father's sister's husband's previous wife's daughter's husband. Suffice it to say, again, absolutely zero blood relation.
Then we get into the section about the Tesseract School and the Looking Glass references. This is probably the most cinematic part of the episode. Candace clearly understands how mysterious and dramatic that section sounds.
All right, now for some fun because remember when they were freaking out about me discussing time travel, me discussing specifically Project Looking Glass, the CIA thing that actually happened. They allegedly stole Sumerian technology to peer into the future. Well, you have to imagine my surprise when I began looking into Erika's early years. How panicked were they when I said Looking Glass? Whoa, no, she's talking about Project Looking Glass. That's crazy. Meanwhile, they're down in Arizona, like naming their schools Project Looking Glass, like Looking Glass Tesseract. Put them in the school. I just love that. It was like an accidental troll. But what is very exciting about finding her at this school is that it unlocked a lot of important things that needed to be known about Erika's life and her connections.
From a storytelling perspective, it absolutely works. It makes the story feel layered and symbolic. But the same question still applies. Does this reveal something concrete about Erika Kirk? Or does it mostly deepen the atmosphere of the narrative? Because those two things are very different.
I mean, wow. Speaking to people who went to that school, the one in Paradise Valley, to be very clear, there's other Tesseracts. It got shut down. The one I'm talking about got shut down in the year 2000. And then other schools, because they had other schools, kept going. They changed ownership. But this one was there for a very small amount of time. I'm looking at the yearbooks, and there are some interesting players involved in this school that kind of went down for fraud, just robbing the piggy bank. It's like a recurring theme.
By the end of the episode, Candace returns to her main argument. If there is nothing to hide, then why are people panicking? Why is there outrage over someone asking questions? That's a powerful rhetorical move, because it makes criticism of the investigation feel like evidence that the investigation is correct. But opposition to a claim does not automatically prove the claim. Evidence proves the claim. And that's what viewers still need to see as the series continues. My overall reaction to episode 1 is this. It spends more time building a narrative framework than proving a final case. There are moments that feel genuinely investigative, especially when the episode deals with records, timelines, and direct contradictions. But there are also large sections built on interpretation, speculation, and symbolism. That doesn't mean the series is wrong, but it does mean the real test of the investigation is still ahead. If later episodes bring stronger documentation and clearer evidence, then this story becomes much more serious. If not, then episode 1 may end up being remembered more for its storytelling than for its proof. I'm Paige Monroe, and this is The Paige Monroe Show.